Good morning, everyone. We got together to study the Torah portion. This week we study Behar Bechukotai. We're going to study a Jewish law from Behar. With the Rebbe's insight, we study from selections from Likutei Sichos, the second talk of the Rebbe on Behar. A short introduction. Among the many mitzvot that appears in this week's Torah portion, there are two mitzvot, two commandments that are connected to counting, and they are dependent on each other almost. And I'm referring to the sabbatical year. Every 6th year, the 7th year is sabbatical. That's the first mitzvah. God says on Mount Sinai, chapter 25, starting in verse 1, beginning of the Torah portion, Shesh shanim tizra sadecha, 6 years shall you plow and harvest. The 7th year should be no one's land. Everyone can come in and benefit from the trees, from the crop. This becomes ownerless. However, right after that, in verse 8, the Torah is teaching us about the laws of Jubilee. You should count for, I'm reading from the text, you should count for yourself 7 sabbatical years, 7 years, 7 times. The days of these 7 sabbatical years will amount to 49 years for you. 7 times 7 is 49. The following year, you should announce the Jubilee year with shofar blasts in the 7th month and the 10th of the month, Rosh Hashanah, and the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur. You should sound the shofar throughout the land. So we have 2 commandments that appear one after the other. Every year, every 6 years, you celebrate the 7th as sabbatical. It will allow for everyone to benefit from the land. The land will take a rest, just like humans take a rest every 6 days on Shabbat. And then every 7 times 7, which is a total of 49, the 50th is Jubilee, Yovel in Hebrew. A Jubilee is just like Shmita, just like sabbatical. So on that time, it's going to be 2 years in sequence, one after the other. And God says, if you say, watch, V'chi tomru, verse 20, when you will say, what will we eat in the 7th year? If we will not sow and will not even gather our products into the house for the crops which grow on their own. And God says, I will command, you should know that I will direct my blessing to you in the 6th year, and it will yield produce sufficient for 3 years. For the 7th, 8th, and 9th, because the 8th is Jubilee, and the 9th, while you're planting and plowing and sitting, you will need to be eating. So God is giving us on the 6th, 7th at the year before Jubilee, we cannot plow or plant anything on the 7th and on the 8th, because the 8th is Jubilee, and only on the 9th you start. By the end of 9, you're going to have some food, but until then, you have a total of 3 years. God says, no worries, I will take care of it. This is what pertains to our discussion. So how do you count? By the way, Jubilee has many other rules outside agriculture, and sabbatical has other rules. One of the rules that apply to sabbatical is that slaves, Hebrew slaves or maid servants, they are going free on the sabbatical year. In addition, the Jubilee, even a slave who refuses to live at the sabbatical because he wants to remain with the wife the master gave him, and he wants to continue serving his master, and the Jubilee has no choice, and he is going free. And another part is regarding homes. Anyone who inherited a place in Israel and sold a home in certain areas, not in border cities, but in inside land, and not in cities that are surrounded by walls. Anytime they sold that land, it's only a lease, because comes the Jubilee, they get back the house or the farm or the home that they sold. So therefore, Jubilee has other rules. Now, we will have a discussion about the role of Jubilee and how it works, and the roles of sabbatical, how it works. I'm going to share with you just a little text and then give you a background. Says the Rebbe, based on the verse in this week's Torah portion, You shall proclaim freedom throughout the land for all its residents. This is regarding the law of Jubilee. Says the Talmud, explains that the laws of the Jubilee year, Yovel, apply only when all the land's residents dwell in it. That is, when the entire Jewish people live there. Therefore, after the exile of the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, the observance of the Yovel was nullified. The Torah tells us the Jubilee will apply when you all are settled in the land. Says the Talmud, this is a condition. Jubilee is counted only when the entire Jewish people resides in the Holy Land. During the time of the first temple, 150 years before the destruction of the first temple, which is about 550 years ago, more, 630 years, 2,630 years today, about 630 BCE, the king, an Assyrian king, expelled 2.5 tribes from the Holy Land. It will take another 150 years until the destruction of the temple, of the first temple, and then the expulsion of the entire Jewish people will take place. But 150 years prior, because 2.5 tribes are gone, you don't have all the inhabitants on the land, and Jubilee ceased from existing. What about sabbatical? Sabbatical is not conditioned on all the Jewish people residing in the Holy Land. The only one is Jubilee. So they kept the sabbatical, but they did not keep Jubilee until for 150 years before the destruction of the first temple, which, as I said, about 2,650 years ago.
No.
Oh, that's what we're talking about.
But the Jew,
That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Joe, hold off.
Okay.
Nevertheless, the Talmud states that even in the era of the second Beit HaMikdash, the second temple where there was no Jubilee, when the entire Jewish people no longer lived in Eretz Israel, not only the 2.5 tribes, but the remaining 9.5, majority of them weren't in the Holy Land, the Yovel, the Jubilee year, was still counted and sanctified in order to sanctify the series of the 7 sabbatical Shmita years. To explain, the reckoning of the sabbatical years begin in the year of the Yovel. This follows the opinion of the sages who maintain that the 50th year is not included in the reckoning of the sabbatical years. Therefore, the Yovel was counted in that era. Why? So that the sabbatical year will be observed in the appropriate time. And that's what Bob the accountant is referring to. If you count the way the Torah wants, 7 times 7 is 49. Then what's the 50th?
No.
The Yovel. When do you start counting the next 6 years? The year 51.
Right.
Now, if you remove sabbatical, the Yovel, the Jubilee, you start counting which year is the first year for the next sabbatical? 50th, because you did not have a Jubilee. Therefore, says the Gemara, the Talmud, even though Jubilee laws do not apply anymore because the Torah says all of its inhabitants have to be in the land, but in order for us to count sabbatical properly, you need to insert the 50th as a year before the next cycle. And therefore they counted Jubilee. There is another opinion, another rabbi, who says that the Jubilee is part of the first year. In other words, after 49, what's so hard to understand? After 49 is a Jubilee and the first of the next 7 cycle. But the rabbis, majority, and that's the rule, you count 49 as the Torah tells us, and then you count 58, and then you count 7 more. Now, if you take a Jubilee, after 100 years, you're 2 years behind already. After 200 years, you're 4 years behind. Therefore, they counted Jubilee separate from the sabbatical, 7 years, so that they follow the counting properly. I hope everybody understands.
There's 2 answers.
Rabbi, we have lost the count of Yovel.
Not yet. You need to wait a moment. We are getting into the law before we can discuss the reasons. Comes Tosfot, our French sages that lived about 1500 years ago, and says they don't understand. In Jerusalem Talmud, they say that the reason God put together those two laws, sabbatical and jubilee, to teach us that the only time you follow sabbatical is when you follow jubilee. If there is no jubilee, there is no sabbatical. So, sisters, I don't understand. The Gemara in the Babylon Talmud, they say that when there is no jubilee, but there is still sabbatical, and therefore they also follow jubilee to allow for the sabbatical to fall in the right times, in the right years. But if you don't have jubilee, you don't have sabbatical. Why should they count sabbatical? Therefore,
Oh, Sarasota is saying, why count sabbatical at all if you're not going to count jubilee?
if there is no reason to count jubilee,
Yeah.
there is no reason to count sabbatical.
Why, the law still apply to this?
The law applies that sabbatical is counted only when jubilee is in existence.
Why are we not following that?
Yeah.
Oh, just a minute. You guys, first I appreciate it because it shows that you understand. But just hold it. I'm going to answer everything.
We're jumping the gun.
Rashi and Tosfot therefore disagree. So Tosfot answer that even sabbatical is rabbinic. It's not from the Torah decree. The rabbis wanted us not to forget the law, so therefore they instituted that we follow the sabbatical. Because based on Torah decree, no jubilee. Why no jubilee? Because 2.5 tribes were expelled, and Jewish people are expelled from the Holy Land. No jubilee. If there is no jubilee, there is no sabbatical. Therefore, according to Tosfot, that's what's important for you to know. According to Tosfot, jubilee and sabbatical is a rabbinic enactment and not any more Torah enactment. Period. Rashi, just a minute. Rashi, according to the Babylonian Talmud, holds that sabbatical is a Torah decree and it keeps going even when jubilee does not exist. And therefore, he says that's why they needed to keep counting during the Second Temple. They needed to count the jubilee so that they know how to count the sabbatical properly, that every 50 years they skip 1 year, they do not count 1 year. Is that clear so far? So again, to summarize, there are 3 opinions.
Only 3?
Rashi is of the opinion that sabbatical is rabbinic today.
That you just said again?
I'm going to summarize it again. Rashi is of the opinion that today there is a rabbinic enactment according to all. Tosfot says that it's an argument between the Babylonian and Yerushalmi Talmud. According to the Babylonian Talmud, it is a Torah decree. According to the Yerushalmi Talmud, it's rabbinic. Because Yerushalmi Talmud says if there is no jubilee, there is no sabbatical. Did you understand that? So we have, in general, 2 opinions. One opinion is that sabbatical and jubilee, that sabbatical is a Torah decree, jubilee is rabbinic. According to the second opinion, both are rabbinic. Is that clear? Now the Rebbe brings in a 3rd point, and that's what you guys are asking. According to all, as soon as the Second Temple was destroyed, we do not count any more jubilee. So now we do 49. What happens after 49? We start again the cycle of 7 years. So now you have a 3rd opinion. Actually, it's divided into 3 stages. At the time the Jewish people lived in the Holy Land, during the First Temple and prior, they counted jubilee and they count sabbatical. Every 49, they added a year for jubilee and then counted another 49. Is that clear? What happened at the end of the era of the First Temple when the 2.5 tribes were expelled? They kept going with jubilee, but it's a rabbinic enactment so that the sabbatical be counted in the proper sequence. So they did 49, they added a year, even though it's a rabbinic enactment, Torah decree no requirement, so that they continue on in the counting in the proper way. Is that clear? After the Second Temple destroyed, they don't even have a rabbinic enactment for Jubilee, but they count totally different. They're counting 49 and another 49, another 49. So if I were to start the time when they entered the Holy Land and count sabbaticals, I will not have a very clear year when, from a Torah point of view, the sabbatical should fall, because we have stopped counting jubilees. If you add jubilees, the numbers will be totally different. If you are excluding jubilees, some period they had jubilee, some years they excluded jubilee. Did you understand that, or it's a little behind that?
So what's happening?
Bob, do you understand?
What's happening today? I mean, they have.
After the destruction of the temple, they let go of jubilee, and it's only sabbatical. Therefore, according to all, it's a rabbinic decree. Why it's a rabbinic decree? Because when you don't have jubilee, you don't have sabbatical. That's why we have today Pusbul, because part of the sabbatical is that you lose loans. If I owe you money and the sabbatical year came, the loan is forgiven, is forgotten. Hillel came and saw, Hillel, the elder, saw that people would refuse to lend because they're not going to lose it. So what did he enact?
Thanks.
That I gave my money, I give that loan over to a court, and the court is not under the obligation to forgive the loan. Now, it's only applicable because it's rabbinic. When Mashiach will come and the sabbatical will re-establish as a Torah decree, Pusbul will not work. I need you to understand that.
When Mashiach comes, we won't have those problems of lending and borrowing and so on.
You never know. There is a mitzvah to do gmilut chesed. So there is a debate about doing that. People will lend each other just for the purpose of serving God.
With the Mashiach? Why can't he sell food?
Because this enactment helps only because it is a rabbinic enactment. And therefore the rabbis, the rabbis segregated their enactment only when it's an individual lending or borrowing from an individual. But if a court is involved, the public,
Why would that with Mashiach?
because the rabbis have no right to put stipulations. Because the Torah says you lose all your loans, the period.
All right.
So Mashiach comes, you also won't have, you won't have.
Just a minute, can Bob,
I had, when I was working, I had clients, both banks and individuals who would execute a process.
wonderful. All right, Harry, what?
Mashiach comes, we won't have able to give tzedakah because everyone's not, no one's.
So I just told you there will be that mitzvah of tzedakah and gmilus chasodim will apply during the time of Moshiach, and there is a great discussion about how it's going to happen. But there will be such a thing. They say that most
come back, we'll be poor.
of gmilus chasodim would be in teaching of Torah,
Sorry?
teaching Torah.
Right,
But there will be gmilus chasodim in money.
okay.
The Rebbe points out, I hope I didn't lose you. I want to summarize this again. The Torah puts Jubilee and sabbatical in this week's Torah portion next to each other. The rabbis say that only time sabbatical and only time Jubilee applies in the Jewish people are all on the land. 2.5 tribes were expelled 150 years before the destruction of the temple, and therefore the Jubilee was gone. However, the rabbis continued on counting Jubilee, first and second temple, just so that the sabbatical will fall in to the right place. Tosfot is asking, according to Jerusalem Talmud, if there is no Jubilee, there is no sabbatical. Therefore, Tosfot holds that according to that the whole of idea of sabbatical is rabbinic and not Torah. So according to Rashi, Babylonian Talmud holds sabbatical is Torah decree. Jerusalem Talmud holds that it's rabbinic decree. According to Tosfot, they both agree that they both are rabbinic. And the Rebbe adds that today we don't even have Jubilee. Why we don't have Jubilee? Because even sabbatical is a rabbinic enactment, because we don't have Jubilee. And therefore, we are not even counting, we don't even need a rabbinic enactment for Jubilee, but we count 7 years of sabbatical, then we count another 7 years of sabbatical, and on and on and on. The cycle always 7, 7, 7, 7, without inserting the 50th year as a Jubilee. And therefore, today is already a third stage. right? The first two is doing the two temples, and then after that, the destruction of the second temple, Jubilee is totally gone, even from the cycle of the sabbatical.
So when Mashiach comes, we're gonna have the Yovel.
We'll have to, it's one of God's commandments.
And up to now, we've had how many? 9?
We don't, how many Jubilees? I don't
We
know.
had 9 until they stopped.
Where did you see it?
But I read it.
All right, so I'm not going to argue with that.
450 years, it's only 450.
The point is that when Mashiach will come, we will start counting sabbatical, 7 times sabbatical, and then come to a Jubilee. And then, which will be a different way of counting than the way we count today.
Well, when it comes to the right year, that'll be exactly the right time.
It's possible, I don't think so.
We don't even know it.
We know
What?
when we stop. We know when we stop counting.
Do we?
Sure, we know it. We just leave it. We gotta stop.
Says the Rebbe that there is a rule that anytime you have a dispute between rabbis, it is because in Kabbalistic terminology we explain it that it's connected to the source of their soul. According to their soul, they understood God's desire to be in a certain way. And therefore there is room for each one of the opinions. Even though halacha would be decided with one, and you have 3 other opinions, each one of the rabbis, it's not totally invalidated. It's called Elu va'elu divrei Elokim chaim. Every one of the opinions is God's desire, because that soul came from one area and another soul came from another area, where over there they saw it differently, and therefore for their soul, it's one way. That explains why, for example, when Mashiach will come, the will change in many areas, because now God's desire will shift to a different area. Says the Rebbe, we can explain those 3 levels of sabbatical based on, in a similar fashion. So again, we have 3 levels. During the time of the temple, the first period, sabbatical was sabbatical was Torah, and Jubilee was Torah decree. During the second part of the temple, the second temple, the sabbatical was either rabbinic or Torah, depending on Babylon and Yerushalmi. Jubilee was definitely rabbinic, because the majority of Jews. And then the third period, after the destruction of the temple, where Jubilee is totally gone and not counted as part of it. Here is the Rebbe's explanation. When it comes to nullifying ourselves before God, anyone who study a little bit of the Hasidic teaching will discover there are 2 types of nullification. I'm going to use the terminology in Hebrew and explain. Bitul hayesh or bitul b'mtziut. Bitul hayesh means I feel one way, but God is great and it's for my own benefit, therefore I nullify myself. For example, come Shabbat. I wish I can watch a movie. I wish I can go out to the village and enjoy life. But God said rest, and God says that's the way to rest. So I do it. It's called Kabbalat all. I have my existence, and my existence has a mindset, and my mindset don't understand, but I still do it because I know it's the greater good for me. That's the way God wants, and therefore it's the right thing for me. Bitul b'mtziut, complete nullification, is that I have no mind of my own. I say, God, whatever is good for me, I know it's the right thing. I don't even debate or discuss it. It's the right thing for me. I feel it or I don't feel it. I like it or I don't like it. Has no play in our relationship to God, and we do exactly as God, just like a robot that follows the remote control of its owner. So these are 2 entities, 2 types of relationship with God. By the way, a good example would be a marriage. In a marriage, under the chuppah, unto death do us part, right? I will do whatever you want. What happened the next day, even in the honeymoon? It doesn't make sense to me. Why are you doing that to me? If you really want me to do it, I'll do it, but it's not right. You have bitul b'mtziut at the time under the chuppah, you're so in love and engrossed in the relationship that you will do everything and there will be no hardship, no challenges. And they do it and they promise and they really mean it. But the next day when you wake up, you're hungry and you know exactly what you like for breakfast. And there, now you're going to, if you are having a healthy relationship, you will nullify yourself, but still inside you hold grudges. It's hard for me to accept that. But I do it, bitul nullification, non-existence. Says the Rebbe, I want to get into this. If you read at the time of sabbatical, God, I just read to you, God says, and if you ask, how will I be able to support myself? God said, I will bless you. Right? We just read it. In other words, the sabbatical year, you are asking questions. How will I make it? And God says, don't worry. The question is still there. We hope the answer will be provided. Says Rabbi, I don't understand. You already went through that 7 years earlier and 7 years beforehand, and you are still around. Why are you asking the question? And the reason is because it's bitul hayesh. Because I have my mind which contemplate and put the numbers together and says doesn't make sense because I have to pay the employees, I have to pay the insurance, I have to feed my cows, and I have to prune my trees and all cost. It's going to cost lots of money. Last year, I almost didn't make ends meet. How am I going to make it this year? The fact that you already have the experience before and you saw that they walked out and you're still intact doesn't help. That's called bitul hayesh. I'll do it, but I still question how will it work. But when it comes to a jubilee, the Torah calls it ukratem draw. Draw means total freedom, total breaking of any boundaries. When it comes to Jubilee, God does not say, how, if you ask, how will you live? Because there is no questions. At that moment, you surrender to God and accept God's decree and will follow. No questioning, says the Rebbe, because sabbatical and Jubilee represent two types of relationship with God. Sabbatical that comes every 6 years, and the 7th year represent where I bitul hayesh. I surrender to God, but I still have questions in my mind. It doesn't affect my action. I'll do what God wants, but I still wonder how will it work out. Jubilee represents total nullification, where there is nothing out of God, and therefore I'm not worried about tomorrow because God told me, if you do what I say, I'll take care of you. That's Jubilee. Did you understand that? Okay. Says the Rebbe, the idea of Jubilee, to have a total nullification, each one of them is a plus. Because, says the Rebbe, Jubilee is total nullification, and therefore the connection to God did not spread all over the body. You're not using your mind. You're not using common sense. Because as soon as you use common sense, you're going to ask questions. The fact that you have no questions, it affects only part of your body, part of your entity, not your entire being. Because if your entire being is surrendered to God, you should have had also the mind surrendered to God by thinking and asking questions. The bitul hayesh, the sabbatical, however, is very external because you do it against your will. However, it involves you, every part of your body. It's a lower form of relationship, but it involves my entire body. Why is it so effective? I'm going to use a relationship. When a spouse is questioning and is not don't understand why my spouse wants to go here, travel there, buy this, go away from that, quit the job, whatever, but I say, you know what? I respect her because of my love. Then we know that it will a lasting relationship. Nothing will shake it, because as soon as the spouse misbehaves or does things that makes no sense, I'm still in the relationship. I already went through that process. So it's a low form of relationship, but it's a very solid relationship. We call it, it involves my entire being. But if it's a total nullification, I'll do whatever you say. I'll never question you. Well, there are times that will call into question, and then you stop. You stop the relationship because it makes no sense to me. I'm losing out of the deal. I'm putting much more than you do. Those issues come up only when someone is bitul b'metziut. He's totally nullification because he did not put his brains into the relationship. Did you understand that? Ali?
Not the best.
Not the best?
Okay.
Do you understand there are two types of
Yeah,
nullification?
got that.
Do you understand that if I question and I still surrender and
Yeah,
serve,
be too high.
it means that it's a lower form of nullification. However, it's a more solid because it includes every part of my body that involved in the relationship. That's why my mind is asking, or it makes no sense. If I'm not asking any question, it means I shut down my brains. I said, God is great, and I do whatever he says, just like a robot. And therefore, my mind is not involved in the relationship. Simple as that. Which is more important? It's the greatest debate in the Kabbala about which one is important. But let's see the way it works here, the way the Rebbe says it. Says the Rebbe that sabbatical is a question. You ask, how will I survive? Which means it's bitul hayesh. Things don't make sense to you. But at the end of the day, you do what God says. It's a much more solid and good footing the relationship. Jubilee is draw. Draw means total freedom, where you have nothing to worry. You do not involve your mind. Your mind is out of the discussion of the relationship with God. Says the Rebbe, at the time of the temple, the first period of the temple, Jubilee was a Torah decree, sabbatical was a Torah decree. This was the best type of relationship to God. They had, on one hand, total nullification to God, and also included, let me help. You need to leave?
I'm a captured audience. Thank you.
And they lived with both sabbatical and Jubilee at the same time. Then the 2.5 tribes are expelled, and then they rebuild the second temple. Now they have a sabbatical, which is an external lower type of relationship, but it's a much more, the bond is much stronger, but Jubilee now becomes rabbinic. In other words, bitul b'metziut, the much greater level of nullification is no longer. It comes the third period, but still we are counting the sabbatical based on Jubilee. In other words, we insert the Jubilee, a rabbinic enactment, so that the counting of 7 years should follow the right sequence. Comes the destruction of the temple, now Jubilee is totally gone. You don't even count, it's not part of the cycles. You count 7, 7, 7, 7, because now it's the total nullification of Jubilee don't exist anymore. Which one exists only? Bitul hayesh. The law, it seems a low form of nullification because I question. However, at the same time, it is a much greater lasting relationship because your mind is involved with the questioning, with the relationship, but at the end of the day, you say, I may not understand, but I have to do because God is great. God is the best. Says the Rebbe that this should bring us to the coming of Mashiach, when we will return back to both of them at the same time, where the Jubilee will enhance the sabbatical. Jubilee will be part of the cycle, that complete nullification will be the ultimate goal after having the lower form of nullification, which is bitul hayesh. And that's the lesson from this week's Torah portion, from 2 laws that appear next to each other.
Thank you very much.